Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting radio-exclusive offer just for you. For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just text WATER to 64,000. That's WATER to 64,000 for your 2 free gifts with purchase. WATER to 64,000.
By texting 64,000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Pocket Hose. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at pockethose.com/terms.
Hey there, and welcome to Operation Domination. Before we get started today, I wanted to take this time to say some words about a member of the fantasy football community that we lost this past week, and Anthony Servino. You might know him on social media at The Real NFL Guru. Anthony was actually one of my very first guests before Operation Domination even existed, and he's been on this show and its iteration since then as well. And when I first started out, when he came on, after we were done recording for about 2 hours or so, we just talked on the phone, and he really just helped me out and gave me a lot of tips and advice on how to break into this space, and he did that for a lot of people, and a lot of people owe him a thanks. He was great at fantasy football content. He did a lot of NFL betting content. And if I know anything about Anthony Servino, he would want the show to go on. So if you want to help out, if you can go to the GoFundMe page, which is at The Real NFL Guru, and you're able to do so, please do. But this one is for you.
Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
You gotta be confident about your Achilles when you
Chase
show up.
Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got him at
Chris
Tired of
Dowhouse,
hearing about these are pointless in fantasy in this sense.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate.
All right. Welcome into Operation Domination. Dan Mater, your host as always, joined here with Christy and Adam LaRue. Chase Thornton not in the building today, but it is okay. We'll get through without him somehow, some way. We're going to be talking about the NFL future bets with the upcoming season. I'm going to switch gears a little bit because this show does cover our bets as well as your fantasy football content. We're about the cha-ching, and we're going to hopefully get you some winners here today. Before we get into that, though, we actually had NFL news that we have to talk about right off the rip. We had J.K. Dobbins signing a 1-year contract with the Denver Broncos, and Aaron Rodgers, after we pleaded last week to please sign so we didn't have to continue talking about him, signing a 1-year contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So first off, J.K. Dobbins, Chris, does this move the needle for you at all when it comes to R.J. Harvey?
It does move the needle for me for R.J. Harvey and other backs as well. But I think one of the things that's coming out of the camp is that they aren't necessarily happy with what they're going into the backfield with. And we saw this last year with Javonte Williams. He had a role that he could play for J.K. Dobbins. Could be that Javonte Williams role that they're talking about, using him on third downs, using his pass protection. We know R.J. Harvey's a great runner. Had some questions about whether his pass protection might keep him on the field. So we know rookies can kind of struggle with that. We know Estimate's been a guy talked up in this offseason, but hasn't necessarily delivered. So it's going to continue to be a rotation of backs. And we know if anybody's going to ruin in our fantasy days, there are too many backs to choose from, it's Sean Payton.
Well, and this is what I was a little bit worried about. Now, I love R.J. Harvey, and I think sky's still the limit. I'm still going to have him as a top 24 running back. I still think he's going to be the lead guy. But I was worried about us seeing, annoyingly, an Aldrick Estime or a Tyler Beatty or a Jaleel McLaughlin. I don't know if it moves the needle too much for me with Dobbins when it comes to Harvey, but I do think this means Estime's the third string. I do think this means either Jaleel McLaughlin or Tyler Beatty, one of them will not be on this team come week one. So that's where it moved the needle for me. But R.J. Harvey was going to be a guy I wanted to get efficiency anyway, not necessarily 300 touches. So I'm not too concerned about this as far as where I already had him ranked. But Adam, let's dive into Aaron Rodgers with you. All right. He signs a 1-year contract with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now that's finally finalized. We no longer have to talk in hypotheticals. So what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just glad it finally got done. I'm glad that I don't need to see Mason Rudolph as a starting quarterback or Will Howard or God forbid. And I'm glad to see DK Metcalf not need to deal with those guys. Now, look, Aaron Rodgers isn't what he once was by any stretch of the imagination, but he's a lot better than those players.
He's as good once as he ever was. Sorry,
exactly,
I had to right there.
Exactly, yeah. But look, this is a lot better than the alternatives, I guess, is where it really boils down to. Is that great? Not really. Not at this stage of his career, but a lot better than the other options available to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Well, I mean, let's keep this in mind, right? Like Aaron Rodgers did make Devontae Adams fantasy relevant. Garrett Wilson was still fantasy relevant, especially towards the end of last season. Could it be that he's a little bit healthier? I mean, a lot of people were talking about, they were surprised by how good a shape he was in when he did report to OTAs in Pittsburgh. We'll have to see. I'm with you on the whole DK Metcalf thing. At least this gives the guy a fighting chance to be able to do something that we want to see, right? But here's what I do want. And when they do that mid-season hard knocks, I wanted to be on the Pittsburgh Steelers because I need to see behind the scenes Aaron Rodgers and Arthur Smith and how that dynamic, the two most egotistical guys I know in the same locker room. I got to see how that's going to work. I'm so intrigued. It could be really bad. It could be really good. I have no friggin' clue. But the best is that we don't have to talk about it hypothetically anymore. So there'll be more of that to come later on in our summer shows as we get ready for 2025 season. Speaking of the 2025 season, though, Chris, we have some opportunities to maybe make some bets now and just, get ourselves excited. It's June. We got to get excited about it. So what do you have bringing to the show today?
Yeah, Dan, we do an excellent job, I think, week to week, bringing you guys bets during the season. And right now, I talked about last show, it's kind of that dead season. We're getting some news, we're getting a little bit OTAs, we're getting training camps, so some signings here or there. But you want to whet that appetite, and you want to make some money, and you want to dominate. So we're going to explain to how you have to dominate some of these future bets. And we're going to start off with looking at the big picture, in a sense. Look at some division winners, Dan. Do you have any division winners, or Adam, division winners that we're looking for that have, maybe off the cuff that you like, or some guys are good, long shots willing to put a couple of shekels on. But before we dive into that, I'm sorry, I want to get back to you, Dan, and kind of talk about, is there a difference when it comes to betting? You get some guests come on with our betting show, but are you kind of the guy who's really good at this stuff? You kind of take a different, approach when it comes to futures, or are you kind of looking for the biggest bang for your buck?
Well, I mean, you definitely first and foremost, what you have to keep in mind is that when you're making futures, especially if you're making them in June, and you might not be as psycho as us, and that's fine. I don't think these lines are actually going to move too much throughout August, to be honest with you. They're pretty much set at this point, unless we have some major injuries. So the thing you have to remember is that your money's going to be tied up for a really long time, right? Because we're talking division winners and Super Bowls and conferences and MVPs. Like, you're putting money in now, you're not going to get it back until January on some of these bets. So you have to keep that in mind, where you're not going to place a full unit bet, in my opinion, when it comes to that situation. So you want to get more value. You want to take more longer shots. I'm not placing bets on favorites in the sense of, I'm not placing bets that are giving me minus 110, minus 120, minus 150. It's pointless. It's a waste of time. You better be at least doubling my money at plus 100. But even then, I want something a little bit more valuable than that. So with that said, we want to get those division winners. I do have a few. I'll start off with the first one just because I think everybody knows where this is going. I swear this is not me being a homer. But Chris put in the outline, do you have any predictions to go from worst to first? Well, the most obvious one to me is San Francisco. They're plus one. So what's funny is they're still actually favored to win a division, even though they were last place last year. But it is plus 150. So it's good enough value for me to want to take a team who, I'm just going to keep reiterating, has the easiest schedule in the NFL, has had health return players like Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey. Ayuk will be back at some point. Mustafa will be back at some point. Nick Bosa's back in the lineup. A lot of key players who were out last year are back and healthy. And the entire team, even the guys who have ACL injuries are off to the side, the entire team showed up for volunteer and OTA minicamp. I don't know if I've ever seen that happen, ever. Not just for San Francisco, almost anybody at this point. Everyone showed up. They talk about Trent Williams. This is the first time in 10 years he showed up for OTAs. Like, it gives you an idea of what the mindset is right now in San Francisco. They're all in and making this thing work. And the biggest headline, I do believe, still has to be the improvement on the coaching staff. Robert Saleh and Brant Boyer. The two things that killed them last year, run defense and special team, were abysmal. They spent all this draft capital on the big boys up front to help stop the run. They just made a move for Bryce Huff to help them on third downs. They were the worst defense on third downs last season. This will help them get into longer third down situations. And now they have better pass rushers and a better defensive coach to call those things. And you're doing the right things by having kicker competition with Jake Moody and Brant Boyer actually spending time on making sure that special teams is going to be able to make plays and play complementary football. To me, this lines up where San Francisco is the easiest, worst to first prediction. Plus 150 is good enough value for me. I have some others, but I want to see what Adam has.
Yeah. So is this for worst the first or just division?
Just in general, like what are some of your favorites? So you have some of these division winners, like you're taking some shots on, Adam.
Yeah,
in terms of swinging, that's all.
In terms of a shot that I want to take, I love Atlanta at plus 240. I think that that's a division that is very much so contestable. I don't think that the Buccaneers, by any stretch of the imagination, have like a stranglehold on that division. To me, Atlanta is a clear second place. And at plus 240 to be at worst second place, you at least have a fighting chance. You were in the thick of it for the bulk of the season with Kirk Cousins throwing more interceptions than touchdowns, and now you're away from that. I do believe that regardless of what we think about the trade on the defensive side of the ball for their pair of edge rushers, look, regardless of the value that they spent, which was bad, they got better on defense. Like, that still is true, despite what they paid for it, which was dumb.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting radio-exclusive offer just for you. For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just text WATER to 64,000. That's WATER to 64,000 for your 2 free gifts with purchase. WATER to 64,000.
By texting 64,000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Pocket Hose. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at pockethose.com/terms.
I think Atlanta makes a lot of sense at plus 240.
Chris, You got one for us? What you got?
I do. Well, first of all, at the end, I absolutely love the idea of talk about the futures and you talk about letting the money kind of sit. One of the things that I think is an advantage is you don't have to spend a lot on someone in the future. So what you can do is spread that around in a sense and kind of bet some different colors, different numbers, take some shots. So I love what both of your guys are saying. I agree with both the points. I'm going to take a bigger shot, Dan. I'm going to stick in your division while I love the 49ers, and I would probably throw a couple shekels on that. We'll get to them actually in a little bit for my side of the point of view for them. But excuse me, the Seahawks are in the same division, paying out plus 550. I like the coaching staff. I like the team they're putting together. I think they have an idea of identity. And if anything does happen in San Francisco, I think they're clearly better than the Rams. They're clearly better than Arizona. I think this is that team that kind of sneaks in there with 10, 11 wins. And I think it's a team that plus 550, I think is a nice little opportunity to kind of cash out, make some money. And for a bigger swing from worst to first, or I'm not quite worst to first, but pretty close, how about those Jets in the same division? I know everybody loves Buffalo, but plus 1,600 for a team that is pretty good in my book, coming off the radar, have a team that could have one of the better defenses. I think we all forget how good that Jets defense used to be 2 years ago. If they get better coaching, better play overall, this could be a really good team. I love the offensive line they're putting out there, like the defensive line, how it's coming together. So when we look at the division, everybody's kind of happy about the Patriots. I'm not buying. Dolphins still struggling. If I'm going to take a swing, plus 1,600 for the Jets, I'll throw a couple shekels on it.
Maybe a shekel.
Or a shekel.
I need you to go back, though, because I hit the bold statement drop for the Seahawks talk. I need you to talk about a little bit how they're clearly better than the Rams. I think you're going to catch people on that one.
Well, I think if you look at the, everybody's excited about Devontae Adams. I am too. We can't wait to see the Rams actually throw the ball. Matthew Stafford could be healthy. But How often has Matthew Stafford been healthy the last 2 years? Number one, if he gets hurt or he isn't healthy, we've seen how quickly this Rams team can crumble. Same thing at the receiving court. Devontae Adams isn't always the most healthy guy. Puka hasn't been the most healthy guy. So you got two receivers you're depending on that have a lot of injury issues. And then usually when you have that kind of situation, you want to depend on your defense. The Rams defense has not improved to me in any kind of capacity this offseason right now. I don't see how they upgrade in the secondary. Maybe they still pull out Jalen Ramsey. I don't know. But I'm looking at a team that you could definitely attack on offense and you can score points versus a team that I still think has to kind of address some offensive line issues. Like they had decent play last year, but not great offensive line in any capacity. So overall, I look at Seattle team. They're just adding pieces. They have depth. They got a little bit younger. They lost some of the older guys, Tyler Lockett, lost DK Metcalf, but they replaced it with a better coaching staff that's going to be able to utilize the players they have. And I think you have a team also in defense that has a lot more playmakers, Mike McDonald, and his defense he likes to play. So I look at a defense that's better than the Rams, clearly, in my book. And I look at an offense that I think is ascending. It has multiple playmakers. Like if Darnold doesn't pan out, they could throw somebody else out there. They have options. Where I think the Rams, like I said, Stafford gets hurt. Jimmy G, good luck.
And if Sam Darnold gets hurt, who cares? Because Jalen Milroe is all we want anyway. No, I'm just kidding. But I do think the gap is closer than maybe people would realize between Seattle, really the whole division, to be honest with you, but Seattle and the Rams. And you could even throw the Cardinals in there to some degree, but then Drew Petzing comes in and screws it all up anyway. I do have another one to throw out here. This is especially for Adam. Dude, you want to talk about teams that have a big line that I think have a possibility? That could be the Colts. They're sitting at plus 380. And I kind of put in my notes here, I think the Anthony Richardson injury, the latest one, might be a blessing in disguise, because honestly, I think this team is better, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think this team is better if Daniel Jones is the starting quarterback for this team week one, as far as getting the playmakers, especially Josh Downs and Michael Pittman in particular, more involved and having the offense run off of Jonathan Taylor, which is something they did to some degree last year. I do think we'll see more of that this season when Steichen tries to get that offensive line going. I think there's a real chance here. I mean, they're going to have the 20th ranked schedule, so they have a pretty easy schedule heading into this thing. The Houston Texans, there's things to like about the Houston Texans. There's no doubt about it, but that offensive line didn't get any better. If CJ Stroud continues to get killed, that could be interesting. And the Colts, for everything that was going wrong last season, we're still on their heels. Like, I don't think we should be ruling them out. I'm really impressed with the defense the Colts put together. This is a much better defense. I like Lou Anarumo as a hell of a lot better for your defensive coordinator. I like the moves they made for the pass rusher. He's got a defense that fits his type of scheme really well. I think the Colts, people are sleeping on because of the quarterback situation. They got all the other pieces. And if they just get competent quarterback play, I think this team could surprise some people and beat the Houston Texans for that division, especially at plus 380.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting radio-exclusive offer just for you. For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just text WATER to 64,000. That's WATER to 64,000 for your 2 free gifts with purchase. WATER to 64,000.
By texting 64,000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Pocket Host. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at pockethost.com/terms.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, early on the season when they were healthy, like they played close games with the Texans, like who were pretty much the only competition, and that was with Richardson throwing like 45% against the Texans. So I definitely I think that could be kind of to your point with some of the other divisions closer than a lot of people realize.
Does anybody else have another one that they want to throw out there?
I mean, I'll throw this out there. I know we've been really positive about the Chiefs, and we should be. However, if you want to talk about playing the numbers, like we're talking about how what if Andy Reid coaches again and how he should and how that's going to be awesome and Mahomes should return to normal. We've been saying that for like 3 seasons now. What if none of it happens? And what if the Chargers, who were way ahead of schedule last season at plus and are now plus 200 to win the division, or plus 310 to win the division? Why can't they? Realistically, on paper, I'd take them as the better defense. So unless the offense steps up, like, I'm sorry. Like, I think that they have a pretty decent shot.
Oh, I love that. I'm all over that one too. I absolutely love that. I kept telling people, I think this is the year that we finally see the Chiefs not win the division. And I've been on that for a couple of months now. So, and I'm with you. I have the Chargers taking a step up. You're going to see that when you see where I have Justin Herbert ranked in my quarterback rankings. Like, I think it's going to be really, really interesting as far as that division goes. We might finally see some change up there. Chris, you got another one?
Well, for the worst at first, an opportunity I think could be Chicago in that Central Division at plus 550. One of the teams that's just as good as anybody else is in that on paper, quote unquote, as in that division. So I think that's one of the shots you could take as the worst at first and pays out pretty well.
Well, Chris, I'm going to add to that because that's who I wanted to bring up next as far as like the worst of first picks go. And look, this isn't coming from a standpoint of, oh, we're all in Chicago because they won yet another offseason. They should be so much better with the coaching and the additions. And of course, that plays a big part of it. But that's not where I'm coming from on this. I'm coming from the fact that I have questions about the other three teams. Like Frank Ragnow just retired for Detroit. They've also have their coordinators that they have to go through now. They're going to be changing. To some degrees, you're trying to keep the same scheme, the same plays, but there's definitely a transition when it's a different play caller on both sides of the ball. And now that offensive line went from completely dominant to like, maybe it's still above average, but it might not be a top 10 offensive line, or at least it very well might not be a top 5 offensive line like we're used to seeing over the years past, especially right now out the picture. Zeitler, somebody they lost last season. Like, there's going to be some mixed up there. The Minnesota Vikings, we don't know what J.J. McCarthy is. And there's some reporting coming out of Minnesota that maybe they're not totally sold, everybody in that building. And then he hasn't done much to change their minds for the people who weren't necessarily sold from the get-go. The Packers, which version are you going to get? Like, the Packers seem like an every other year type of team. Maybe this means this is the year they're on. But when you have that young talent and no alpha dogs, you have a team that can get either really, really hot or really, really cold. The only thing that stops me from just totally hitting the cash register button here is that the Bears have a really tough schedule for a team that was in last place. It's really unfair what happened to them. So it's the only thing that makes me a little bit hesitant. But again, this goes back to questions about the other teams, not just what the Bears are able to do this offseason.
Yeah, and to that point, Dan, one of the things that is a little concerning is you look at the Detroit team, and you go back to when they kind of hit their stride. They started off 1-6 with Brian Johnson in that scheme. It was kind of, iffy how it was going to pan out. They wound up ripping off the next 8 wins, finishing, the season strong, and then we know what happens to Detroit moving forward. Chicago might have a similar situation where Brian Johnson's not trying to make a quick fix here.
Chris. I let slide once.
I knew it. Ben Johnson, isn't going to guy who's kind of just trying to get out there and just win necessarily right off the bat. He's trying to make this thing a long, sustainable thing, and I feel going back to the basics in a lot of ways. So I wouldn't be surprised if Chicago starts off a little slow, but I do think, like you said, out of the division, if you're going to throw a couple shekels on a team, this has got a good shot with all the improvements they have made this offseason.
All right. Well, with that, let's fast forward to the conference, right? We get past the playoffs. We'll loop around to some wins and losses. I do have some picks for that, but let's talk about the conference on both sides. Chris, let's go right back to you, man. Who do you have? Who do you throwing some shekels on for the NFC and AFC?
So the NFC, Dan, I love what you talked about the opener show about the 49ers. I think if you're going to go ahead and bet them division, why not bet it as a conference possible champion? I mean, plus 950 is nice payout. A team that you can kind of look at has historically been good when they're healthy enough or get there. They're going to contend. They have a better coaching staffs versus the other teams in the NFC. So I love the opportunity for the 49ers to kind of bounce back and take a little step further to go be the conference championships in the NFC.
I mean, I had them on my list too. I'm not going to argue with that at all. Chris, give me your AFC real quick, and then I'll go to Adam for his NFC and
AFC. For the AFC, I took a little bit bigger shot because I do think it's kind of narrowed down that there are only certain teams you're going to bet on, whether it's the Ravens, the Chiefs. Maybe you're brave enough to go the Chargers. I figure if you're going to go balls to the wall, why not go with the Jets plus 11,000 payout Like I said, I like this defense. I like what they have on both sides of the ball, and I think they can surprise people. We see what Minnesota was able to do when it kind of fits on both sides. The coaching staff has what they want in place. I think this Jets team has an identity, and I think they can surprise a lot of people. And like I said, if it pays out, I'm getting plus 11,000 on that.
Did you just say the Jets win the conference?
As my shot.
Okay. All right. Going.
Like I said, I think this conference in AFC is a little more narrowed. If you're going to take the shots, take a big shot.
And that's fair. That's going to bring me to a point later on. Adam, who you got for the NFC and AFC?
So NFC, I'm going to be pretty boring and just kind of follow you to a degree. And I'm just going to go a step further on your 49ers and say, look, they were right in that conversation not that long ago. They were, I imagine, probably in this same tier in terms of value with the Eagles and Lions last year before the season. So realistically, the only reason that they're at plus 1,000 is because of their performance last season. They don't have to play their two wide receivers who weren't doing anything because of the money that they made. They don't have to do it because one's gone and one's hurt. So I think that they're going to be in a little bit better of position, and hopefully Ayuk comes back healthy. And I'm willing to take that chance just given the value. I have a similar philosophy on the AFC as you, Chris, just in the sense of I'm going to go a little bit deeper because of just where the values lie. The couple teams I think have the best shot. I could run back the Chargers, but that's a boring answer. But realistically, I will probably throw a couple dollars on the Chargers to win the AFC. But how about we talk about coaches remembering that they're able to coach and do things? The Dolphins were a great regular season team not that long ago. They're very recently an awesome regular season team. They could very well be the type of team that goes on an awesome run through the regular season, wins the conference, and then gets stomped in the divisional. Like, that feels so Dolphins and so Mike McDaniel. So, listen, at plus 4,000, I think there's worse things to do with $5.
That's fair. That is fair. Here's my problem with the Dolphins, and I thought I had another note on them somewhere, but I don't. So I'll just bring it up here. Did you guys hear about how they're talking about the focus is on Tua getting the ball out of his hands even faster?
Yeah, they're like, is it even possible?
I'm like, he already got out of his hands faster than anybody else did in the NFL last season.
That's called handing the ball off.
Yeah. Like, are you going to throw the ball more than 2 yards? What do you mean faster? Like, how, like, oh man. Yeah. So I don't know if Mike McDaniel is going to remember how to coach. That's kind of my point of why I bring that up, if that's really going to be the focus this year. But hey, $5, yes, there's worse things you can do with $5. So mine are kind of more top heavy. And this goes back to, okay, remember, your money's going to be tied up. All right. So it depends. It's up to you and your situation, whether you think it's worth holding on to. But you guys talk about the 49ers. That's one of the teams I had. I also just said, you know what, betting on the Eagles at plus 300. When you look at the teams in the NFC, I see the Eagles and I see the Niners mostly because of their pathway and rejuvenated team. I don't see another team that sticks out to me as like, yeah, I think you have a real shot. Now, anything's going to happen in the NFL season. We all know this. But when I'm looking at the Commanders at plus 900, I'm not a fan. When I'm looking at the Lions at plus 475, I'm not a fan. The Packers, the Rams, the Bucks, the Minnesota Vikings. There's too many glaring holes with all those teams to make me feel like it's even worth betting on. The Eagles at 300 to repeat as conference championships. Yeah, that team, I mean, they lose on more. Besides that team is mostly back together, and it's a really talented. It was a really young team last year already to begin with. So I'm going to put plus 300. Hey, maybe I'll make a little bit of a bigger size bet. If you're okay with tying it up, go for it. On the AFC side, I'm sorry, I'm boring again, but I think this is the Bills' year, and I'm just going to piggyback this from the Bills at plus 350, and then go ahead and bet the Bills winning the Super Bowl at plus 700. This is a team right now that has a 24th ranked schedule. Just think about that. The Bills made great additions to their pass rush, first and foremost. We're a first-place team last year and have the 8th easiest schedule. Like, they have the 2nd easiest schedule of all the first-place teams from last season. The only one that has an easier one is the Tampa Bay Bucks. They have, the 5th easiest schedule heading into this one. But with all the investments they made, I think they made them in the right places. When McDermott's at his best is when he has a pass rush that he doesn't have to think about blitzing. Okay, and just drop back his 7. That's when he's at his best. They did that this year. You have Espinoza like coming off the bench because you have Joey Bosa and all the other guys that you have. Like, it's a really good front four. I believe, especially with how Kansas City's offensive line is, and I think Kansas City is the only Achilles heel to the Buffalo Bills in this conference. I have them win the Super Bowl at plus 700 and at plus 350 win the conference as a result to that. I don't know. What are you guys' Super Bowl picks?
Well, I'll jump in real quick on that point, though, Dan. One of the things I do like there is, if you're going to take an adventurous bet, if you're going to go for some like a bigger one like the Jets, like I said, if you have more of a sure thing that you feel confident in, it's okay to kind of cover yourself in a sense where you can bet on that and be able to more like, hey, if Buffalo pans out, I'm still going to good. And as Dan pointed out, you're still going to make some money off the favorite, taking both those things as the favorite. But if you also want to take the shot, you have that shot, but maybe you don't lose too much because you made it up from picking the favorite. But to the Super Bowl pick, I kind of talked about this and I'm beating the drum again, but the 49ers, Dan, like plus 2,100. Like I said, everybody kind of wrote this team off this offseason, and I'm not understanding why. Losing Banks didn't matter. They lost a bunch of guys who were already hurt. They replaced these guys before. It's not like they haven't had other safeties to replace or other corners they've replaced. What they needed to upgrade was another pass rusher. And they also needed to upgrade how they coached. And Dan talked about both those things were addressed in this offseason. I think the offensive Trent Williams is eager at practice. I mean, I don't think Trent Williams has ever been eager to go to practice. So I think as he talked about it, his team just seems to have a want to. I think they kind of know what's on the wall for this team. And I think that everybody's been, McCaffrey's healthy, sounds like. I think this team has a lot going for him. At plus 2,100, I'm willing to kind of ride that.
No. All right, I like that. Adam, come on, give me your Super Bowl pick. It's June. Give me a Super Bowl pick.
I hate to be boring, but this is the point where I feel like being safe, it starts to make sense to me at plus 650. The Eagles just won, and they had one of the best draft classes. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? They got Jihad Campbell at 31. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, tell you that I don't think they're going to win? I do. Like, I'd be lying. I'd be lying to you if I told you I don't think they're going to win. So that's just what makes sense to me. Like, everyone else, there's decent, 3-pointers that you can just shoot, I guess. But realistically, in terms of all the contenders, you look at the Bills, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Lions, like the teams in that top tier. Like, to me, it's not really close that the Eagles are the best team there. Like, I think that they are in a league of their own right now. So to be 50 points removed from the Bills is just outright silly to me, to be honest with you.
Dan, real quick, I do have a question about the Bills' love in a sense. I know you're very happy with the pass rush. I like Bosa too, but this is Von Miller a lot to me. Like, is he going to play? How often is he going to play? Is he going to be injured by like week 3? Because we've already seen Buffalo's defense have that before. And then at corner, they still haven't really improved the corner. They drafted Harrison. He's already struggling as a rookie in camp from our understanding. Like, I don't know where they really addressed some of their key issues that they needed to this offseason.
Well, corner wasn't a huge issue. Maxwell Harrison, I think, first of all, is a huge upgrade from what they had. I think he's going to be a shutdown corner right off the bat. Benford's fine. What the difference to me is that when you have Greg Rousseau and you have Joey Bosa coming in and Espinoza coming off and Deion Walker, who I am a fan of as a third down pass rush specialist, especially on as a 3 technique, you have a lot of mouths. Even TJ Sanders, like Ed Oliver's is still there starting. Like, you have a lot of penetrators on that team. And set up with an offense and when it's led by Josh Allen, that you're going to be up by 2 scores pretty often and be able to unleash that. So I think it sets up really, really well. And this isn't Von Miller to me because Joey Bosa, yes, he gets injured too. He does a hell of a lot more than Von Miller does on the field when he's healthy. And I don't think the game plan is to ride Joey Bosa early in the season. I think that's why Espinoza is such a big deal, because you can manage his workload and make sure he's healthy for the playoffs, which is all you really care about. I mean, you're going up against teams, Ravens, Chiefs, all the top contenders, besides the Chargers, are really the only one I can think of that are really going to have a really good offensive line. Like, it's going to be a matchup nightmare for a lot of these teams going up against Buffalo. It feels like to me, now the Chiefs have blood in the water, it is the only Achilles heel to stop them. This seems like their year. Any rebuttal to that, or that was it? You just want my.
No, I was just curious. Like I said, this is a team that I kind of look. Well, I think you guys looking to see the Chiefs' blood in the water. I kind of feel like Buffalo is a team that people are seeking to kind of overlook and just assume they're going to win the division, assume they're going to be good. And I haven't really been impressed with what they did. And I felt like, as we talked about, kind of just winning. I wonder if Buffalo is sort of becoming more like the Chiefs over the next couple of years where their offense did get a little boring? Is it going to be a little more, conservative? And the defense, I don't think is necessarily able to carry them. So I'm curious to see how it unfolds this season. They're very talented.
All right, well, we'll have to see. But one thing, before we get off the Super Bowl, though, where you can really make your money, okay? And this kind of goes back to Adam's my point, maybe playing a little bit safer. But if you do like the Bills versus the 49ers, that's plus 4,500. Like if you pick the actual finalist matchup, the Bills versus the Eagles, plus 1,700. Even if you want to go with the Baltimore Ravens, it's plus 1,700 with them and the Eagles, and about 4,800 with them and the 49ers. So that's a bet where you can get a big payoff and go with more of the favorites up at the top. So I just kind of wanted to point that out there as well as something for people to look at. Let's get a little win-loss, shall we? I guess I'll skip my first one, other than, no, I'm not going to skip my first one. Adam actually talked about this earlier, but the Atlanta Falcons winning the division. And I want to add to it here a little bit. So their line's pretty much at 9.5, right? Plus 225 over 9.5 wins. And I'm taking that. I have Atlanta winning 10 games this season. 29th ranked schedule. So, or in other words, the third easiest schedule, however you want to look at it, right? Second year in the new system. And I love what they did to improve their pass rush. They improved their coaching on defense by hiring Jeff Ulbrich. Jalen Walker, James Pierce were two of my favorite pass rushers coming out of the draft. They got both of them. Okay. I mean, look, granted, I'm not entirely sure how this team's going to stop the run, but if they get up 2 scores and they have an offense that could potentially do that, well, they might run away with this thing and be set up for that kind of success. They were second worst in sacks and quarterback pressure last season. That's going to improve. Ultimately, what this is going to come down to is, do you believe in Michael Penix? How does he develop? How far can he carry him? That's what this is going to come down to. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm a big fan. I know his numbers the last 3 games of the year were a bit inconsistent. There's no question that offense took another pop when Penix was on the field compared to Kirk Cousins. All right. And this was almost a 500 team dealing with a shell of the form that we're used to seeing out of a Kirk Cousins offense. So I like the Atlanta Falcons a lot in this situation to go over 9.5 and plus 225. That's pretty good odds. You want to be real ballsy and pair it up with Adam's pick to have them win the division on top of it. You can get a pretty decent coin on a team that's got a real shot to do it. So I want to throw them out there. Anybody else got some wins and losses?
I definitely love that one. That was one of the ones I had looked at and peeked out, but I seem to be beating the drum over and over again the same thing. But the Jets plus 7.5 or 7.5 wins.
All in on the Jets, man.
I'm buying it. I'm buying. I like what they're putting together. I think it has an identity and it makes sense. I think they can surprise some teams with that, especially in that division. But I also, like I said, plus 7.5. I think this team could be at least a 500 team. So I'm the 7.5 to me. I'm taking the over on that. The rest of them, there's some other ones that are interesting to me, but I have to see the great payouts necessarily. But I did like the Atlanta one was the other one that popped out to me.
I don't think I've ever heard a non-Jets fan be as in on that team as you are. I just want to point that out. Adam, you got any win-losses for me that you really love?
Win-losses is a little tougher. Do one of you have any more that you want to talk about?
Yes, I do. I do have more. Don't worry. I have 2 more, actually. So one, and this is just because I'm going to plant my flag on it because I'm going to be fighting the good fight. I got under 9.5 at plus 105 for Washington. All right. I'm not buying the whole this team is going to be the emerging team, the superstar team. Jaden Daniels is a nice player. This isn't a knock against him necessarily, but they have an 8th ranked schedule. Okay, 8th hardest schedule. Make sure we're being clear here. Their projected implied win total is 9.3. So even Vegas is telling you they got a little bit under that 9.5 to begin with. Their keys to this team being better than what it was last season revolve around Deebo Samuel, Laramie Tunsil, Marshawn Lattimore. Like, they need 3 guys with extensive injury histories. All 3 of them have questions about how good are you even anymore. All 3 have questions about, are they cooked? That's going to have to be the cornerstones of each of those rooms. Deebo for the wide receiver room, Laramie Tunsil for the offensive line room, Marshawn Lattimore. And if they don't hit, which is a decent, like, I'm okay taking a shot on one of those type of players, but 3 to be cornerstones, you're taking a big risk. And Cliff Kingsbury doesn't get better with time. Dan Quinn doesn't get better with time. This is a roster that overachieved last season as it was. I like Jaden Daniels, but I still think this guy is injury prone with his build. Whether I'm right or wrong, it's something I'm still concerned about. I don't see the Washington Commanders playing up to people's expectations. So I have the under 9.5 on that one.
I absolutely love that one, Dan. And great takes. Look, it's not just, what they have, those guys you talked about 3, that's huge pieces. They haven't addressed their Achilles heel defensive line. When has Dan Quinn ever done well without a good defensive line? And they don't have a good pass rusher. I don't know what they have stopping the run because they traded most of their guys away in the last 2 years. They used to have a good defensive tackle tandem. We don't know what they really are moving forward. So I think this defense has got all kinds of questions for an offense that has some talent, but it isn't like a killer talent team. This isn't talking about Cincinnati kind of weapons they have on the outside. And will Terry McLaurin even show up anytime soon? So this is a lot of things that go wrong in Washington. I like that bet.
No, so and one, I'll hit the cash register on that one, so we'll lock that one in. And the other one I just wanted to throw out there, since I'm on the Bills already, the way Chris is on the Jets, except my team's actually favored to do it, but that's besides the point. Bills over 13.5 wins. Okay, and so I have them winning the Super Bowl. I have them get number 1 seed. There's a good chance if they get the number 1 seed, they're getting the 14 wins. And when I look at that schedule, they could easily sweep the division.
Well, they're a favorite in every game, Dan, I believe. In every game, they're the first team that's a favorite in every single game this season.
Absolutely, because of what there's, again, great schedule for a team that's already stacked and was already in first place with Josh. As long as Josh Allen stays healthy, this team could get the 14 wins. It's plus 270. I like that for a team that I'm already in on to begin with. All right, so that wrapped it up for me when it comes to the win-losses. Let's talk a little awards here, people. A little award ceremony. I guess we should probably start off with the rookies. Adam, do you have any defensive or offensive rookie of the year bets loaded up?
Yeah, I do have. Well, I had been, and it still may not be the worst. I had been sprinkling on RJ Harvey prior to Dobbins, which is painful. But otherwise, I do think there's some good values in both discussions. I'm taking a look. I still love Mike Green. He was very high on my list for me as a prospect. I know he had some big character issues coming out, and that hurt him quite a bit. But both him and James Pierce Jr. are guys that I think will get sacks at the NFL level, and ultimately there's 2 things that I guarantee you just win awards, and it's passing touchdowns and sacks. If you get a bunch of sacks, you are the default to win the award. You get a bunch of passing touchdowns, you are the default to win the award. You break 15 sacks, you're getting the award. I think these are guys with the talent to do it in defenses where they're not necessarily being completely like, okay, we just block this guy and we win. Like they're in situations where they're not necessarily like the only player. So I think these are guys that are in situations where they can compete for their values at both over plus 1,000. I think Mike Green at plus 1,200 and James Pierce at plus 1,600.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love that. So I was going to say this, but the defensive rookie award is, first of all, I think it's much more open than the offensive rookie award is, and I will probably get into that in a second, because right now Abdul Carter is by far the favorite to win defensive rookie at plus 250. I'm here to tell you guys there's zero chance Abdul Carter wins defensive rookie of the year because they're going to ask him to play linebacker. Penn State literally moved him from linebacker to defensive end because he wasn't cutting it at Penn State. I don't know what makes them think they're going to cut it in the NFL. And you have Brian Burns on the other side. So it's not like it's a linebacker, but really he's a pass rusher every play. Like, no, that's not really going to be the case. Like he's going to actually be asked to play linebacker. I think that's a mistake. So the defensive rookie of the year, Adam, to your point, I'm looking at values. I'll name James Pierce's teammate, Jalen Walker, at plus 1,000. I like that one quite a bit. Talk about a guy who get 15 sacks. I'm right there on him. And then the other guy, plus 2,800, Will Johnson. Interceptions, passing touchdowns. He's going to be the starter right off the bat for the Arizona Cardinals on a division that throws the ball a hell of a lot. He's going to be put to the test. I think he's really good. And that was one of the big steals of the draft is when the Cardinals got him in the second round. $2,800. I like that a lot between those two. Chris, what do you got for defensive rookie?
You guys stole both the ones I really like a lot. So, but the one I maybe throw out there, I thought that odds in front of me right now, but I think Xavier Watts is another guy that jumps out for me. Talk about interceptions, talk about those pass rushers you're going to have in Atlanta, have Bates next to you. It's an opportunity for this guy who is a classic ball hawk who had 14 interceptions over two seasons while he was in college in Notre Dame. I think Xavier Watts might be a guy to kind of keep in mind that you look for if he has good odds. I think it was like plus 3,600 or something like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up right now.
But what I do have in front of me, Dan, and pulling that up, my rookie of the year for offense. I think there's obviously the favorites like Genty and people like that, or Cam Ward. But if you're going to take a shot, two guys I think if you take a shot on them, Caleb Johnson plus 3,000 for Pittsburgh. I know Aaron Rodgers might change that narrative a little bit, but I think you're going to have opportunity to score a lot of touchdowns. And an offensive line that thinks is being improved from last year. I like how they kind of fit for Caleb Johnson, and then Kyle Williams for on New England. Look, this guy is a guy who kind of lighting it up for fantasy purposes. We love this guy opportunity moving forward as what he could do for the New England team. Why not for rookie of the year? If he comes out and lights it up, he's got the opportunity to do it. I love Drake May this year, so I think it's a guy at plus 7,000. I'm going to throw a shekel or two at.
Yeah, I like that. I just put down Ashton Genty. I'm not willing to bet anybody else because I don't think it's going to be anybody else. I think the only way Ashton Genty does.
But I think that happened last year, Dan. That's why I said I think it's important to kind of remember that it's not always the favorite.
No, it's not always the favorite. Sure, I got him.
The clear favorite.
I was going to say I was also on the Caleb Johnson one when I was looking at offense, just in the sense that because Aaron Rodgers is there, that is a team that we're going to talk about all damn season long. Like that's just the reality. Like they're going to be in the spotlight, and if they have comparable stats and everything goes well, then he absolutely has the shot. Like they're going to have more eyes than the Raiders. I think. So if the stats are comparable, he could do it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I just think Ashton Genty's by far the best offensive player, and he's going to get the volume right off the bat. And while I don't trust Chip Kelly, I do trust him to use the running back. So I'm just not willing to go anywhere else. Not that what you're saying isn't some nice dart throws. Chris, Xavier Watts. So if you want to go him, he's plus 10,000.
10,000. Yeah, I know it's pretty high one.
So, yeah, that's definitely one I'll throw a few shekels on because I'm with you, especially with Raheem Morris and that Atlanta backfield. That's the secondary player who could get some turnovers and could actually pay off. So I like that one quite a bit for a dart throw. All right, let's move to – so we moved to rookies. So let's move to defensive player and offensive player of the year. Chris, I'm going to go right back to you. Who are you interested in taking a shot on a defensive player of the year?
So defensive player of the year, and they talked about defense. This is one of my favorites, Dan, because it's so wide open. I think there's so many opportunities, but usually leaning towards a defensive lineman for the most part because it seems to kind of be the ones that have won recently. You need those kind of sacks to kind of do it for yourself. So I have two for you for a guy who I think fits that mold. Could be Bosa. We talked about 49ers kind of resurgence. Why can't Bosa plus 1,600 be part of that? I think if he's healthy, he's one of the most dominant defensive linemen out there. We talk about Myles Garrett, talk about other guys out there. Well, Bosa to me is one of those guys who is one of the best. It's just as good watch, as good as anybody else you talk about. And a team that thinks improved, I like Joey Bosa's opportunity to win Defensive Player of the Year.
Nick Bosa, but but
damn it! Thank you.
He keeps doing it. The one thing I will say, what Nick Bosa has been held back by since he's won Defensive Player of the Year. Remember, he's already won that award a couple years ago. Is that he hasn't been able to get in a situation where he's been able to get one-on-ones. He should have that opportunity this year. So I do like that pick. And Chris, to your overall point, because I wanted to point this out, it usually is a defensive lineman. I mean, last year it was Patrick Surtain. I get that. But that was the first time in 5 years that it wasn't a pass rusher. Like, it's usually going to be a pass rusher because of the impact they make on the game. So Max Crosby at plus 1,600, who's the heart and soul of that Raiders defense, and could easily get 15 to 20 sacks in a single season. Especially, I like him in Pete Carroll's scheme. Okay, I don't know how great talented the Raiders defense is going to be, but I like the scheme for Max Crosby. I think they'll have an identity and something to work around. That MVPs, like, I know defensive players don't get MVPs. Is there anybody who's more of an MVP for his defense than Max Crosby right now? I don't think there is. So I think it gives him a really great shot at winning Defensive Player of the Year. Adam, you got one?
Yeah, let me throw you a really similar situation in a lot of ways, and that's Trey Hendrickson. 17 and a half sacks back-to-back seasons.
For the UFL? Because when he doesn't sign his contract with the Cincinnati Bengals.
Well, I was going to say, if he is, and I'm going to be careful with my language here, there's a word that I'd love to say, but if he is irked with his team, look, we've seen guys have their best career seasons in contract years when they're mad at their team a billion times in the NFL. So a guy who's already flirted with 20 sacks back-to-back years, I could see this being the year, especially that we've seen the talent around him dissipate to the point where, look, he's going to be pinning his ears back all game long if he's still on Cincinnati, because they're going to be trying to pass rush in shootouts all year long. Like, that's just the reality of what the Bengals are going to do, because the offense is going to keep humming and that defense is going to give up points. It's going to be shootout after shootout, and that's great for pumping up sack totals. You have the alternative option with him, where, I mean, look, there's unknowns, and that does impact his value. But the reality is, okay, what's the worst case? Oh, he's being talked about being traded to a bunch of contenders, where he will also put up good numbers, but he will do it in the national spotlight as well, and potentially have better numbers because of the unit around him potentially being better. Like, there are some bad teams that would really hurt, what could happen with Trey Hendrickson, but I think there's more upside than not.
I agree. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Dan, I'll throw one more out to you. If you do go off, the grid in the sense, and you do get a Patrick Surtain moment, why not, like he beat the drum with the Jets? Why not Sauce Gardner plus 7,500? That was one that really stood out to me.
Jet.
Yeah, I'm gonna break out in the chant soon.
Oh man, no, look, Sauce Gardner with Aaron Glenn, who's going to run a man-to-man system. That's the one that I don't think is outlandish.
In contract year, throw that out there for this.
That is the one I don't think is outlandish in the Jet bets that you've been trying to make over there. Let's talk about offensive player of the year. Adam, who's your offensive player of the year you'd like to throw a few shekels on, or two?
I am just really hoping that this is the year that we finally get Bijan Robinson to really run loose. I'm hoping that what was limiting this offense and why it was so predictable, I said this on the show a couple times last season, that I just truly believe it was how slow on his feet Kirk Cousins was, that they genuinely could not run the ball in certain sets that they wanted to run because he could not get to his spot. Penix can do that. And I think with that, and I think with a down-the-field passing attack to get safeties out of the box, and with a division that I don't respect any of the defenses in that NFC South, I think that we've seen this be all right, you had the best season, but a quarterback is going to get MVP, so like the best running back gets this. I think he can do it. I really think the talent's been there. We've all been on that train that he has the talent to do it. It's just the situation around him. And I think the quarterback change is a really big step in the right direction.
Just to add that real quick, because he was somebody who was on my list too. When they finally stopped dilly-dallying with Tyler Algier from week 6 to week 18, he had a 17-game pace of 2,000 scrimmage yards and 19 touchdowns. That would put him right there, and that's just what he did last year. To your point, I think it's going to get better this year. Chris, what do you got?
Why not his teammate Drake London, the guy that I saw Michael Penix getting targeted the hell out of at the end of the season? We've seen guys jump into the Sealy Cooper Cup. We've seen other guys, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. These guys can be explosive receiver. I don't see a lot of competition for Drake London to steal his targets. Kyle Pitts has been, questions whether he's going to be on the team moving forward. Drake London and Penix have that connection. You saw at the end of the season. I think you can continue to see that. And Michael Penix having a tendency to like to throw the ball where he looks first. I think Drake London had a lot of targets this season in a good system, friendly system, plus 4,000. I like Drake London's opportunities.
I have another receiver. We got to go a little rapid fire here, but I have another receiver, Puka Nacua at plus 2,000. When he came off his injury from weeks 8 to 17, he was on a 17-game pace for 173 targets and 1,600 yards. And I don't think we've seen the best out of Puka Nacua yet. He's entering his year 3 this year. Devontae Adams is a good thing, not a bad thing. And I think he can really bust out in that year 3. And he was second to only Chase during that time frame of week 8 to 17. All right, let's go rapid fire. MVP. You can give a couple statements, but Chris, go ahead. Who's your MVP?
If you're going for the higher payout, look at Baker Mayfield plus 3,400, and an offense is going to throw the ball a lot in a very friendly system. He's going to be one of the comfortable guys. You don't have questions around him. I think Tampa Bay can put up a lot of points in that division. Baker Mayfield plus 3,400.
Oh, he's coming back and duplicating. Chris says, Adam, who's your MVP?
Let me just throw you a silly one, a couple dollars. Why not Drake May? I think that the kid is a superstar in the making. I think that he has not great weapons, but he could get to 30 touchdowns with Kyle Williams and with Pop Douglas and with Hunter Henry. And really, if you take this Patriots team to 10 wins, that's got to get you really close to that conversation just because of how bad they've been.
Okay, well, what about a quarterback who's actually going to take his team to the division? And that's going to be Justin Herbert at plus 1,800. Look, from when they turned this offense over to him, after that initial first half stretch, he was on a 17-game pace. Second half of the season for 4,100 yards, 26 touchdowns, and only 3 picks. They went 8-3 over that stretch. They got more weapons this year. I think we're going to see Justin Herbert take another step up with this team. That's going to do it. Run out of time. We do have stat leaders, but I'm sure we'll talk about that when we do our fantasy football analysis when we come back next week here on Operation Domination. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Fantasy Football Advice Network at FF Advice Net, and make sure you download Operation Domination Football on your favorite podcast app. Guys, we'll see you soon. Hey there. I want to thank you for